Hi, my name is Corliss Jackson, and I am President and CEO of Federal Job Results. And today we're going to talk about cracking the code to your federal internship. And this is primarily information for students or for those of you who are recent graduates. And this could be students or graduates of any age. The government does not discriminate. We're going to talk about the Pathways program, which is a program that is specifically geared towards students and recent graduates. We're going to talk about some things that you need to know, and we're going to talk about the federal resume as it relates to students and recent graduates. All right, so let's talk about the Pathways program. There's actually three components to the Pathways program: the internship program, the recent graduates program, and the President Management Fellows program. The internship program is open to those who are current students. And really, the one restriction, if you will, is that you have to be performing work in the job that is somehow, somewhat related to the work that you're doing at school. So if you're pursuing, let's say, a business degree, you need to be doing something in the business arena, which usually isn't hard to match. Okay? The position could be full or part-time, and you need to be enrolled at your school at least half-time. The second part of the Pathways program is called the Recent Graduates Program, and this is for individuals who have graduated within the last 2 years. So you have to be 2 years from your graduation date. This is a program where you can really walk into a position and be given some developmental opportunities and training. Okay. And it's generally a 1 year program. And after you're there for a certain amount of time, they can what we call convert you to make it look like you entered in as a competitive into a competitive position, meaning you'll be a permanent employee and you will no longer be considered a recent graduate. The third component of the Pathways program is called the Presidential Management Fellows Program. And this is a very distinguished leadership development program. And it's for individuals who are currently completing an advanced degree or have completed an advanced degree within the last 2 years. Finalists are pre-qualified at the GS 9 or equivalent level, and it actually allows you to go up to the GS 12. So it's a 2 year program that rotates through an agency or from agency to agency, where you will be given opportunities for training and exposure to different types of programs. So you might be looking at a budget program for a short while where you do a project in budgeting, you might do a project in contracting, you may do a project in human resources. So it's a program that allows you a lot of exposure. And then again, after 2 years, you will be converted to a permanent position, and you'll no longer be considered in student status. And usually that permanent position is at the GS 12 level. It is a very competitive program to get into. They might have 10,000 applications for a handful of positions. So you have to have a great package in order to move forward. All right, here's what your education will get you. So in terms of degree, a GS 5 is what you'll get for a bachelor's degree, which you'll qualify for. A GS 7 requires at least 1 year of graduate level education, or a bachelor's degree with really great grades. So if you've gotten all A's or you've gotten into a National Honor Society, you could get to the GS 7 level with a bachelor's degree. A GS 9 is for a master's degree or a JD or equivalent, or 2 years of graduate education under your belt. And then a GS 11 is reserved really for the PhD or equivalent. Okay. GS 12, you really have to have work experience under your belt. So there's no level of education that can get you to rise above the GS 12. And just so you have an idea here, I wanted you to look at what the salaries look like. So if you're not in a metropolitan area, this is probably your pay scale. There's lots of different pay scales. This is the most prevalent. It's called the GS pay scale or the general schedule pay scale. And you can look at a GS5 starting salary would be 28,000. A GS7 starting salary is 35,000. GS9 is 42,000. So this just gives you an idea of where you might start as a student or a recent graduate. All right, now when you are applying, you will be asked a series of multiple choice questions. And you really want to consider when you're answering these questions what type of experience you have under your belt, because they can ask you questions where you've had unpaid or volunteer experience that would allow you to answer affirmatively. And I want you to be thinking very broadly about that. So if you've had leadership roles at school, or in some kind of training program, or in a civic or social organization, these can count in your favor. So if you have the opportunity to answer yes to some of these questions, or to answer yes, I have experience, or I have very high level experience, please do so. And remember that you can count your paid and unpaid work experience, and it will count favorably if you can document it on your resume. All right, this is just some information about how human resources will look at your qualifications. So they're looking for, in terms of education, they're looking at what you majored in, and they want to know how many years you've completed or how many semester hours you've completed, in contrast to how many are left for you to complete. So if you've done, 60 semester hours and there's 75 completed, you want to list that on your resume. They also are looking at your grade point average. That's important to them, simply because you can get a higher grade based on having what we call superior academic achievement, which I showed you in the earlier slide. They're also looking at your experience. They want to know, what knowledge do you have? What skills and abilities do you have under your belt? Now, this is different than experience. These are things that you probably learned. Maybe you learned them from a textbook, or you learned them in classroom training. These are things that can count in your favor. And as students, this is really, really important. They're also looking at the quality of experience you've had. So if you've had experience where maybe you haven't had a job in your field, but you've had responsibility, or you've had some leadership experience by being a team leader, this is going to count in your favor. They want to know how much time you've spent working. They want to know if the work you've done is related to the job you're targeting. They want to know how complex your assignments have been. So if you've done some real, pretty significant research, you want to document that on your resume. And we'll talk a little bit about the resume in a moment. Span of control. How much control did you have in your organization? Were you, leading a sales team? Did you, open and close the store? Those kinds of things are important. And then what level of decision-making authority did you have under your belt? Were you able to make decisions that made a difference for the organization? All right, so let's talk about cover letters for a moment. In general, you do have to use a cover letter when it's stated that it's a mandatory thing. They definitely want a cover letter, okay? You will not find that often. However, they can be beneficial for you if you've written it well and you've written it uniquely. Meaning, don't write a very bland cover letter and say, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. It would be great for you to write a cover letter that talks about how you're so excited about working at, I don't know, the Environmental Protection Agency because you found a frog in your backyard when you were 7 years old and it wasn't doing well, and you wanted to learn more about, facilitating the process for a clean environment or something like that. Make it unique to the agency. Why is it that they might be interested in you as a candidate? Okay, very, very important. All right, so let's talk about the federal resume as it relates to student positions. The corporate or private sector resume is usually pretty short for students. It's usually one page, and if possible, we like to count the accomplishments, meaning how many widgets, how many dollars, how many contracts, whatever it is you were working on, how many customers. We want to be able to count those accomplishments. Okay. A federal resume can be longer, and it should be longer, meaning if you've had several jobs, even if they weren't related to your field of study, you should be documenting them all on your resume because some of them might show things like customer service or budgeting and finance. Let's say you were a cashier, or if you've had some type of experience under your belt, but maybe it was in a different field, you might be able to show a certain level of responsibility. Those are all great things to show, and a federal resume, particularly for students, can be longer and probably will be 2 or maybe 3 pages long, and that is a-okay. The focus is going to be on skills. What skills have you learned in your training, in your education that you can bring to the table? Couple those skills with any type of accomplishments that you have under your belt and document all of that in your federal resume. So your corporate resume might be the base for your federal resume, but you definitely want to add your skills that you've gained in your educational pursuits, as well as some of the other things that I'm going to discuss next. Okay, so your resume should be very much related to the target announcement, the announcement that you found that you think is a good fit for you. Okay, and look carefully at the duties and the qualifications section and put a summary of skills at the top of page 1. Look at the duties, look at the qualifications. What are some of the things that you can bring out of those into your resume? So things that you've done that are similar, and you want to document that in your resume. And then on the top of your first page, do a summary. What types of skills have you learned or gained during your education? And put those on the top of your resume. Then each job entry, so every job that you've had, which is either paid or unpaid, you should have a description or an explanation of what you've done there. And it can be very detailed. Okay, this is where the HR people will look at what you bring to the table and see how you might meet the qualifications for a trainee position in the federal government. Okay, enter your education as an actual job entry. So let's say you went to ABC 123 University, list the courses with some of the descriptions, list any skills that you learned, list any projects you've been involved in, list any honors or activities, any papers or publications, presentations, trainings, workshops, conferences you have attended, or certifications that you've gained along the way. These are all important activities that need to be documented on your federal resume. All right, so let's kind of go over a checklist here of what you might want to do with your resume. The details I talked about. So I talked about doing a resume or having a resume that's over 1 page long. You want to make sure that you've listed significant details regarding your skills and duties for each job entry. Make sure you've put into your resume your education as a separate job entry. Okay? Accomplishments. Does your resume list accomplishments for each entry that you have on it? And this is only when possible because you're not always going to have accomplishments. Format. Is it easy for someone else to read and follow along? Education. Have you included it on your resume? And if it's still ongoing, have you included the number of credit hours compared to the number of credit hours required for the degree to be complete? Have you included key information? Have you used the keywords, the words that stand out the most in the announcement? Do your credentials stand out? Does the critical information leap off that page for the person who's reading it? And you can make sure this happens by using bold and italics and underline. Do I sell myself on the first quarter of the first page? That's that summary section that I said is so, so important. Now, for each job entry, you must list the month, the day, and the year that you started, and the month, the day, and the year that you ended that particular engagement. That's a requirement in the federal government. You need to list hours per week. That's another government requirement, along with the supervisor name and phone number, email address if possible, and then your salary. And this could be an hourly salary or an annual salary. Okay. Now, has this been proofread? Have you had somebody else review this information to make sure that it is correct and there's no errors in it? Last thing you want is to submit a resume that has typos, needs to be edited. And then lastly, if you are applying to a student position, you will need to provide an unofficial copy of your transcript. You may need to provide an official copy. So make sure you read through the vacancy announcement to see exactly what they're looking for. All right. If you need assistance with your federal or private sector job search, please contact us at federaljobresults.com. We'd be happy to help you.